Welcome to the All Outdoors Photography Podcast with your hosts, Rylan Meadows, Ryan Taylor, and Henry Doyle.
In today's episode, we talk about challenges faced by new photographers. Today's episode had some major technical issues, so basically we lost probably the first 15 minutes of the podcast. So basically, like I said, this is an episode about challenges faced by new photographers. And we missed a couple topics in the beginning because of the recording, but hopefully it seems natural to you guys. But if it seems a little bit off, that's why.
Gears and everything, people. It's not.
Yes.
No. Agreed. Enough said.
However,
Next topic.
However, I don't care if you're on a phone, on a camera, no matter what. Find an app or find a camera that allows you to control each setting in your camera.
Yeah, that's important.
Because I know Lightroom has like a phone app for the newer phones. You can control shutter speed, aperture, ISO. So as long as you can have some kind of control over your image. Because if you're on like a little like a point and shoot that doesn't have manual control, usually what point and shoots do, instead of turning down the shutter speed, they turn up the ISO, which makes your images look worse and worse. That's what new photographers do all the time. So make sure you have a manual control device of some kind.
You might as well roll it into this specific topic and just say, like, if you want to elevate yourself from a beginner to, a little more advanced amateur or intermediate, you got to learn manual mode. And you, like you said, you got to do it through, most modern smartphones have like a pro mode, at least my phone does, where you can adjust all those different exposure settings, or just, something to elevate a prosumer camera, or just a full-blown DSLR mirrorless camera.
Yeah, or maybe even buying some little lenses for your smartphone, just something that makes you be more intentional instead of just snapping pictures all the time.
Yeah, I've never used those, but I've heard good things, and I feel like that'd be, like, especially nowadays, such a nice big or gradual step. I had to, maybe you're taking pictures with your phone and you're used to using that and how it works. Well, then get a lens for it and just experiment with that, see how that works, and then maybe from a camera eventually.
I know this is cliche, but in today's world, most of us are just posting our photos on Instagram mostly. So you could buy like a Canon like 60D or something from like 2010 that's like 10 megapixels, and you could produce some amazing Instagram images from that. Like you won't see a difference. Like you could take the A7R4 on Instagram versus that. There's no difference because Instagram compresses so much.
Yeah, 100%.
Like honestly, if you want to get into photography, buy like an old Canon 5D. I was in my local camera shop this week trading in some stuff, and I was looking in the used section. They've got a Canon 5D, which came out in like 2010 or something. It's full frame, it's like their top of the line camera. It was their first generation. It was literally $250 right there for it.
Wow.
I mean, it's like 12 megapixels.
That's pretty good. 5
frames per second, maybe. Not great autofocus, but it's still something. I mean, I'd say it's better than a smartphone.
And if you take care of that camera, you're going to keep it for years, and you're going to still produce better photos because you're just going to get more experience as the years roll on. Like my very first camera, up until, I dropped it in water, but up until then, I was still using it till that last day. I was still using it to make images that are now some of my favorites.
You can click the little info card if you're watching on YouTube at the top right corner of your screen to listen to our podcast where Ryan talks about how that happened. There we go.
Or you can watch the video because I have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sensor size doesn't really matter either. I know I'm on a full frame sensor, but that's not the reason I bought my camera. I bought it just because of the there are other features I liked about it, mostly the lens lineup and ergonomics. I really could care less about the sensor. I was looking at micro four thirds as well, especially for nature photography. I think we can all agree. I mean, wildlife maybe, but for landscapes, I'm not sure it really matters that much.
Yeah, I don't think it does. Definitely when you're buying a camera, don't just be like going straight to full frame just because you think that's better than crop censored or micro four thirds or whatever. Because, I mean, I feel like the most important thing is the camera's layout, personally, like where, like how you like
comfortable
the camera. Yeah, exactly.
And I think we all have really comfortable cameras. Like all of our cameras are really nice grips and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like in my opinion, that's the most important thing because a camera is going to be a camera and it's going to allow you to adjust your settings and it's going to allow you to take a picture. I mean, that's the principal point.
I mean, personally for me, like the very first time I held a DSLR was in high school when I took photography class, and we used, I can't remember which Nikon, but it was an older Nikon. This is about 10 years ago almost. And I liked it, but like the on off switch, like I took some good pictures. I don't have them anymore. But like for the assignments, and I was like, it worked for that. But it wasn't until, a year or two later when I bought my own, my Canon DSLR, and I was like, feels right to me. I don't know how else to describe it. It just felt right. And I, went out, took pictures with it and went from there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a personal preference.
Sony cameras are great, but they're like they're just not ergonomic. They're just like little bricks, I guess.
I recommend you go to a reputable camera store, whether it's like a local or just even, electronics department in your local, your Walmart or Target.
Shout out to Murphy's Camera.
Okay. and just like shop around, do your research beforehand, and then just go in there, with a budget and just look around. And I'm not saying everyone, staffed at these places is going to be like nefarious purposes, but, don't be swayed by them to get you a bundle or a full frame camera at first. Just tell them, hey, I'm a beginner. What do you expect? Or what should I get? And just go. Or
even ask us if you're looking for some advice.
Go with Canon.
Maybe not so much Ryan. He's not exactly the most into gear, but
go with Canon.
Rylan and I could find you a good camera.
Yeah.
All right. So
next one we have here. I have a funny story with this one, but research the weather in terms of outdoor photography.
So I just have something brief to add here. I know Ryan it seems like a pretty funny story based on the script here. I've talked about that Tamron lens that got killed in the snow and still has problems. I mean, I sold it by now, but I've sold it recently. But be careful with snow. Even if your camera says or lens says it's weather sealed, it won't keep that heavy snow out of it. Also, make sure you have some good weather apps. I use Clear Outside and PhotoCast, and that seems to always work for me.
Clear Outside is good. I can second that.
Yeah, especially for landscapes when you want that 100% cloud cover. I love that app for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of info in that app. I've been noticing actually, like recently, I've been doing a lot of mothing. And I've been like outside my doorstep, just like photographing them as they sit on the wall. And, the muggy moisture of late summer is still present even at night. And the minute I take out from the air conditioned house outside, my lens fogs up instantly. And I have to wipe it off and everything. So
I hate that.
You almost have to play amateur weatherman a little bit when you go outdoors with this, this camera gear. You have to like learn the elements, how to protect them with, clear waterproof bags, even for your backpack and all that such.
I still remember one of the first times, well, this wasn't that long ago, but one of the first times I went out with that 600 millimeter down to to a bird sanctuary near me. I saw this beautiful cardinal. It was right by me. I take out my lens and it's covered in that humid mist. I missed a shot. I just couldn't autofocus because of it. And
same thing with like a really like heavy and dense waterfall. If you're standing next to that, you're probably gonna get mist and stuff kicking up on it. So there's so many different like variables that go into there, play into what we do. And just something, like I said, once again, all these tips or these topics are like things you learn over time. Obviously, I don't follow all these day one. It's stuff you just kind of learn through your own lessons. But I'm just going to say my story here real brief. So it's kind of funny looking back on it. A couple of years ago, before I had a car, I pretty much biked everywhere just to take pictures. I mean, that's just kind of what I had to do. And I went to a local nature reserve, and it was like really stormy, cloudy looking weather. It was getting pretty dark. It was about half an hour before sunset, but like I said, very, very stormy looking. And I started noticing some lightning off in the distance. And I was like, storms move pretty fast, a few miles an hour or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I can, I'm just thinking, I'm so full of myself. I'm just thinking it's far away. It won't matter. And so I tried to set up my tripod and stuff. And then there's like a lightning strike, like right above my head, just goes right across the sky. And I'm like freaking out because I got this, aluminum bike, and that's all I got. So I just like throw my stuff back, and it starts raining fairly heavily too. And it just felt like, I'm cycling home as fast as I can. I probably made it home in like 5 minutes. So, dripping sweat in the summer. And so you gotta learn how to, gauge for the weather. And it's, like I said, just things you learn over time. So the next one is travel time to locations.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's just about knowing, I guess, I don't know, what you guys think it means actually. What does it mean to you?
Well, personally, it's like I know a lot of the times, like when I'm on vacation, like a place I'm not familiar with, I'll be like, oh, well, let's go down here for sunset. And it's like, I don't know, an hour till sunset. And then we leave, but then like by the time we get there, the sun's already gone down. Like let's say it was an hour away. So I mean, to me,
And then you have to
that
hike
means
back
make
in
sure
the
you
dark.
know. Yeah, exactly. So to me, it's like make sure you know how long it's going to take to get you from point A to point B, because
Yeah.
I think that's super important, especially when you're doing outdoor stuff. That's very important.
I can't count how many times I've gone like super big hikes and I'm like, okay, I should be fine. I have an hour until sunset, but I'm also over top a giant hill in the woodland, and the woodland usually gets, it's more shadowed even during the day. So it's going to be darker way before sunset. And I'm like, sometimes it gets pitch black, and I've learned to keep a headlamp with me in my bag at all times pretty much for that reason. Cause I'm like, sometimes you just kind of get caught out there and it gets super dark before you're really, prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. And if you really want to be a good photographer, you really have to do a little bit of planning. So these new photographers, their tendency is just to show up as soon as that moment happens. If sunset's at 8:30, they get there right at 8:28 or something.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, learned that too. Yeah, you have to just, if you ever look at the YouTube photographers, yeah, they all have that same, they're all there way ahead of time, even hours.
I
They'll
think
even spend the whole day. They'll spend the whole day just at the location, scouting it out. If it's new or old, doesn't matter. Checking the light, and they're just seeing the quality of it. And then at the end of the day, they're there at the spot that they predetermined ahead of time during the day, earlier in the day.
I'm
Yeah.
all for scouting and everything, but I think their 5 hours, 6 hours before is very extreme. Like,
I agree.
just so you guys know, you did not need to do that to get good landscape images.
Well, yeah, sorry. What I mean is, like, if it's a very new location to me, that's what I'll do. Like my on location video series on my personal channel, that's what I pretty much did for a lot of the locations. I went to a new spot to me, and I would just hike around, spot, pre-scout all day, take some photographs in between, maybe do like a sunset, whatever. But yeah, if it's like a familiar spot and let's say you're dead set on this image and the time of year, the weather, all the variables work in your favor. Yeah, by all means, get there an hour before, take your shot, leave. But
well, yeah,
it goes both
I'm
ways,
not like, what you do is awesome because you're looking for different compositions. What I think the problem with some of these big landscape photographers is they focus on this one composition for like 5 hours. I mean, how many times have you like taken a shot, gotten a great shot, you're satisfied with it, and you turn around and see other things to take pictures of,
I think a big part of, well, what you said reminds me of like Ansel, which was a big exception, of course, but I feel like a lot of photography is reactionary, at least for me. I go to a place and half the time I'm just like, what I see is what I see. So it might be a cool bird, it might be a nice flower, it might be a beautiful sunset, but it's just kind of like what's laid out in front of me is what I photograph. I do like to plan a lot, though. Don't get me wrong.
Rylan, any thoughts?
No.
Well,
Cool.
one more thing about locations. And this really isn't on our list, but I feel like it could still be interesting. I wouldn't necessarily overly look for compositions. What I do is I just kind of hike, and then the things appear, like Ryan said, reactionary. When things appear, I photograph them. I'm not like, especially in woodland photography, you can't just go in there and expect to get a composition. You have to just look and feel out the shapes and stuff.
Well, these things also take years. Like I keep hammering into our viewers' heads. Let's say if some of them are beginners, I'm guessing, or just more budding amateurs. You just kind of have to, over the years or seasons, you have to, especially like if you're like me, where you're local and you familiarize yourself with places around you. It's all about seeing. It's the longevity of seeing the locations change over time, the habitats develop. Fall foliage, all
just
that
like
such.
invest the time in. Like, I have only been doing photography for like a year and a half, 2 years, but I invested time. Like, I've pretty much every free day I have, I'm out doing some kind of shooting. Just invest and repeat the steps over and over again, and you'll get it. I mean, time is important too, but like, it doesn't necessarily have to be years. You can just, if you really focus on it, you can learn it in about a year, I'd say.
Just take time to know the locations that you want to photograph the most.
Yes. Like for me, my favorite location is the Cherokee Park that's near me. And I've been playing in that since I was a little kid. So I knew everything about that park already.
And see, it's cool. So yeah, I'll say that. Even if it's like a place you've been familiar with since your youth, maybe that could be a potential photography spot. So the next topic, this one, I'm still guilty of it, honestly, is the weight of your gear or your pack load. I'm assuming for what we do, we go outdoors. Some of us hike many miles uphill, downhill, both ways. And we have these heavy backpacks full of gear. And obviously we want to put as much as we can so we're prepared for everything that may become for us, right?
Yes. So I actually...
I'm kidding, by the way. Go ahead.
I actually recently deliberately decided to. First of all, I was having problems with my 24 to 70, so I sold that to my 7200 and I switched to an RF 24 to 240. I cannot tell you how much. I mean, it's pretty much the same image quality, and I get all in one in that one lens covering that 24 to 70 and 7200. So basically, it's so much lighter. It's so nice on hikes. I'm more motivated to go further. I can get great shots. People are scared of super zooms, but you can still get amazing image quality. So don't be afraid to do lighter lenses. I'd say for like wildlife lenses, sure, carry that heavy lens around. But for others, I'd say, don't necessarily get the heaviest lenses in the world.
Or even just like, I do this a lot, is just to take one or two lenses. Like if you're dead set, you're going to a wildlife area or a marsh, take your wildlife lens. Do you really need your macro? I mean, you can, but like just try and focus. And this goes with the previous theme or the topic was knowing your locations, taking the time to really familiarize yourself with them. And yeah, so like if I'm going to a botanical garden, well, I'm probably gonna be doing pollinating, insects like, butterflies, stuff like that, bees, wasps, flowers. So I'm going to take my macro lens. I'm not really going to be using necessarily my telephoto, to photograph birds at a garden. I mean, I guess hummingbirds, but still,
Coming back to the weather thing too, like if it's a bright sunny day, I say to myself, I'm going to be shooting wildlife. So I usually just bring my 600. And if it's a overcast day, I usually just bring my landscape lenses.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's another, quality of light. That's just another thing you learn over time. And like, I totally agree with what you just said.
So how heavy, I'm curious, how heavy are your guys' big telephotos?
I think mine's 5 pounds.
Me too. I have a Tamron 150 to 600, f5.6 to 6.3. It's the first generation. Yeah, it's 5 pounds, about, give or take.
Not the flex, but mine's like 2.
Well,
no one asked, Henry.
It's funny because you're a prime lens, so wouldn't it be heavier? I don't know.
And it's f11.
Yeah, clunky. I'm kidding. Yeah, it's another thing is, I early on I would try and pack. Well, I mean, like I said, I'm guilty still, but like I would pack everything I can just to have it all with me no matter what. But I was also just taking so many unnecessary things like bug spray in winter. I probably did that once. I can't recall, but just stupid things like that just add little bits of weight, or like an external flash when it's a bright sunny day. I don't really need that necessarily.
Worst case, you can do macro with your short telephoto. You can do some wildlife with a short telephoto. You can still get the shots. If you see an amazing bird or something, you could still get something decent. I mean, it won't be amazing, but
with the right camera settings, you can simulate macro. Pretty much any lens. You just drop out, you get the widest aperture. You drop it out, get that shallow depth.
Well, not always widest aperture, but
for that soft like look.
I would say personally, always f8, but that's just me.
Oh yeah, f8's a nice median range if you want like a sharp photo in between, and you get a nice depth of field.
But obviously, f8 for me is more like f6 for you guys, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, 5.
I don't want to get too technical, but
Yeah, we don't want to confuse beginners. And to go with equipment, we also got filters here. And yeah,
I know
so
Rylan has some filter issues.
we've all broken. I think it was episode 2. We talked a lot about broken filters, and early on, I learned what filters are bad, which is pretty much cheap ones, and which ones are good, more expensive ones. And once again, it's like something you just learn, over time. It's
Great
just cheap.
facts.
You have to use, yeah, no, thanks. You have to use cheap filters to learn how it degrades the quality of your images. And yeah.
That was the one thing with me. I was smart enough to just bypass that. I went right into Polar Pro.
Okay, Henry. Okay.
But
No, there is no but.
Do you know how long I went without an ND filter?
You don't really need that.
The first year of my photography, I didn't have any ND filter, and I was doing exclusively landscapes. It was like the hardest thing.
Well, you don't need an ND filter unless you're doing like a waterfall or like a lake or sky. I never use it for like a woodland. I would.
Never
use it.
Depends.
I don't know if that's the application you're referring to, but.
I would say seascapes. You definitely need a filter.
It whatever the desired effect you're going for, like if you're trying to make a glass-like effect and get like a several-minute exposure, by all means use a neutral density, however many stops of light you want. But
I have a 6 stop. It's not. I can't get that glass effect with a 6 stop, but I can really get that nice waterfall effect where it's frozen but not too blurry.
You could set the ball possibly and do something kind of work.
Well, I mean that would overexpose it, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess depends on your other exposure settings, but yeah, it probably would overexpose. So
I mean, I don't know what your guys' opinion on, but Rylan or Ryan, do you ever go past like f/16 or anything? Do you?
No, I haven't in a long time.
Not really, unless if it's just like I really, really need it. That really small aperture, but one exception is actually my abstracts where I do intentional camera motion because I want those. Yeah, because I'm using a not like a slowish, not a very, very slow shutter speed, but it's a very sluggish one, so I can get that just right movement when I shake or pan or tilt the camera, mid shutter capture. But yeah, I definitely need it at the the smallest aperture possible for those, which is usually f/22, f/29, depending on the lens I'm using.
Only reason I use it is for sunstars sometimes.
Yeah,
I usually try to stop myself at f/16 because of the distortion. I can't honestly. I can't remember the last time I went over f/16. I mean, there's nothing like bad wrong with going over f/16. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just I choose not to. For
the beginners out there, something called diffraction happens. So basically, you would think that your image would be more sharp at f/22, but it's not, just because of the way the light bends or something. So just keep that in mind.
It diffracts, the edges on things in the image, and it's undesirable. Effectively, it's like digital noise for most people. It's just very unattractive looking. So the next topic is the right clothing. I remember early on, because you get caught. It kind of goes with the weather thing. So let's say you're beginner Ryan here, and you're just going out. You didn't check the weather. It starts raining. You're like, well, shoot, I'm wearing like a cotton t-shirt, some like cargo shorts, and some Nikes, and I'm like, well, shoot, why am I drenched? Ryan in 2020 here, he's got his rain jacket, he's got a waterproof hat, he's got his Merrell hiking boots on, he's got his hiking pants, and a pack cover. He's more set. But
I mean, you better be ready in 2020. You never know what's gonna happen. I mean, you might as well carry a tent, a blanket. You gotta have
like a lightning rod or something.
Yeah.
Honestly,
a Corona extractor.
All the camera gear you can get. The biggest pack to put on.
One thing I struggled with for a while was not having waterproof shoes. That always sucked. I'm always in a creek to get waterfall shots, so I had to invest in those, and they're really nice. I'm not a big fan of those tall boots, so I found some hiking shoes that are waterproof, and I really like those.
I have this happened to me one time in a portrait shoot. I wasn't wearing my muck boots, which is like the water boots that go up real high, like you were just talking about. and I was wearing just like regular shoes, and I had to get in the creek to get like the right angle, and then like my shoes got filled with water, and like I had to dump the water. Really
Yeah,
embarrassing.
I've been
like,
And
there.
then probably your
there's a
socks
client
got
right there, and I'm
muddy
just taking
stuff.
off my shoes and just dumping it. Yeah, it was bad.
You've gone too far. It's too deep. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's when you get chest waders, you get some nice insulated ones or something. That's something else I learned over time because I used to be so scared of the water, to get in. So I applaud you, Henry, for doing that.
I'd love to get like those chest waders, and like I don't know why I want to do this, but I really want to get like in like a lake and like shoot waterfowl or something. I feel like that'd be so fun just to wear like a camouflage suit and just like sit in a plant and shoot.
I've got actually some photos from a couple years back. There was a place near me. It's super secluded. Like I've never seen more than one other car there. Like I don't think anyone else knows about it. Unfortunately, it's closed right now. It's been for about a year because of the local tornado. They used it as like a debris kind of field to throw like trees and stuff in the parking lot. But yeah, it's like a wetland that has a giant pond, and it's like I said, it's super secluded. No one goes there. So I went like a couple times, early mornings, and I just go there and photograph waterfowl. And I would get I get like waist deep in just this like smelly muck, water. And I have my tripod and my telephoto, everything with me. And yeah, I think you should do it. You can get some great results with that. I recommend that to everyone if you're into wildlife or birds.
Because you want to be on the eye level of the bird. You don't want to be shooting down at it.
Yeah. I recommend it though. And
I love the water, so like if I have to swim, I'll swim. I used to swim a lot, so
I will say watch your footing because when you wade through water, if like your movement's more slow and sluggish, but like just watch your step. You don't want to trip and drop your stuff in the water.
Also, stable footwear in general is very important. You don't want to fall down a cliff.
Yeah.
Or just fall. It's not
because some of the places we go, if you trip and fall and get knocked unconscious or something, it's not good. You got to be really careful.
Yeah, it's like what we do is fun. I think you guys would agree, right? But like it's there's a lot of risk and danger involved, and just be smart. Don't do stupid things. If it's a wet rock, if it's a wet rock and you like get up to the edge and you're just like looking over this big cliffside and you're like, oh, look, I don't know about this. Yeah. And there's no rails or something stupid.
I'm going to put my tripod right here.
I'm going to turn on real fast with my heavy backpack and it's going to throw me off balance. And I'm alone too. So yeah, just be smart.
I remember one time I was a safe distance away from a cliff, like a little vista. It wasn't really a high vista, but it was still kind of a vista. And I was rotating my ball head down. I had a pretty heavy lens on at the time to like shoot a down angle shot looking down the cliff. And my tripod literally started to tip with the weight. That's how bad my tripod is.
Oh no.
That was almost bad.
Get a good tripod.
And I was thinking we are pretty lucky, the three of us. We live in states that have pretty minimal dangerous wildlife. I know there's the occasional bear in Kentucky, but it's so rare that it's not anything to be hugely concerned about.
We have like 100 sightings a year of black bears, and that's mainly I'm in Southwest Ohio, but it's mainly like Southeast Ohio, the more hilly mountainous region. But like black bears aren't really a threat anyways, as is. There's nothing really that people are more dangerous than most of the mammals and wildlife around here. There's not really any venomous snakes, at least in my state.
I almost got bit by a copperhead once, but that's about it.
Shoot.
Which black bears are becoming more popular in the area that I live in. There's been quite a few sightings of them recently.
Oh, wow.
There was one just spotted like on the road beside the road that I live on. So it was like, oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure, aren't they invasive? I don't think they're supposed to be here.
I'm not sure, honestly. I think further down south
in our part,
I think further down south they're like supposed to be there, but I'm not sure about up in our area.
All right, so the next thing is dangers. We already got into this a little bit, but there's some more specifically a couple of bugs we really want to talk about here. Ticks. Yeah. What are your guys' thoughts on ticks?
I hate them.
I had a few.
God.
I get home hours later. I'm like, I look down at my leg. You don't feel it. You're like, oh, there's one just hanging out
Mhm.
on my skin. Pull it out. But
My
couple
most
times.
recent deal with one was I got one on my back, like where I couldn't reach it. So obviously someone had to get it off for me. But luckily I caught it pretty quick. It was about an hour after I'd been back from a trip, and I was just like sitting down, and my back was itching. And when I scratched my back, it was like I thought it felt like something was there, and there was a tick. But
yeah.
I mean, you can get messed up if you get a tick, like
yeah,
Lyme disease. There's this new strain of tick that makes you allergic to red meat. I'm not making this up. It's crazy.
What?
I've
Yeah.
seen that.
I've never heard of that.
Mhm.
Wow.
And I most of the time try to wear long pants unless it's super, super hot. And I try to tuck in my shirt and wear a hat. And that's pretty much
Yeah.
all I do. But of course, I check myself and all that. But
Yeah,
And I
you might.
I think it's also really important to use bug spray and stuff and like spray down. And I always do that. And that seems to help me quite a bit, with the exception of that time I got the one on my back. But I mean, if you spray yourself down really good, I've noticed they don't seem to get on you as bad. So I don't know if you all spray down, but it's a good idea to start.
I mean, I use bug spray for like
I kind of learned.
mosquitoes.
I've kind of learned which areas or locations in my area are like most tick and mosquito prone, so I kind of prepare for those accordingly. But yeah, all this goes in hand with just being prepared. Like, it may look a little dorky, but like tucking your pants, tucking your socks into the bottom of your pant legs, and just wear a wide brim hat for sun exposure, and so just wear a hat at all so ticks don't get in your hair or whatever.
Yeah.
Just all those things kind of work out. What's up?
Speaking of dangers, have a flashlight. When you talked about hat, I have this LO Bean hat. It has a built-in flashlight. It's very low profile, but it's saved me many times after sunsets. I can see where I'm walking. And since it's a hat, I don't have to hold it, so I can just look down on the ground and shine the light.
Or get a headlamp. I use a Petzl. I think it's about 300 lumens. It's super, super bright. A battery lasts a while, and it stows away in your bag, and it barely takes up any space.
You could probably light paint with that too.
I think I have tried it on and off a little bit. So the next one is ample storage, and so now we're going to go.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry, I'll cut that. But
I was going to say, we already talked about a little bit that one. So yeah, ample storage. So now we're going on to in our desk or office, and we got like backup photos, and how what are your kind of techniques or your organization styles to do that, guys?
So I think it'd be helpful for each of us to go through them. So if we want to just go one at a time, I can go first. You think?
Go for it.
Sounds Gucci.
Okay, so basically, I have 2 backups of all my raw files at once. I'd like to have 3 ideally, but I haven't found the cheap cloud service yet that'll back that up. So I have 2 hard drives that have the same raw files. So if I lose one, I'll still have the other. I do delete my SD cards pretty frequently, just because I don't want to keep photos.
I'm just kidding.
I don't want to keep photos on those SD cards. It's just, I don't know. So yeah, I have those 2 hard drives, and I edit off of one, of course. And then also, I do also have a backup of all my TIFF files. People forget this, but when you make edits in Photoshop, it saves in new files. So I make sure to drag those into my second hard drive, so I also don't lose those.
And TIFF files, let me just add, TIFF files are like, I don't know how else to describe it, but they're like in between like a full-blown RAW file and a JPEG.
Mm-hmm. And when you're in Photoshop,
it's like an intermediate file format.
Yeah. When you're in Photoshop and you make those edits and you save it back into Lightroom, and it'll be a TIFF file. And then for my JPEG images, I basically export that to a folder, and that folder is synced to Google Drive, and there's this thing called Google Photos, and it's a free service. It does downscale my pictures to 16 megapixels, but that's fine because I just use those pictures for Instagram, and I still have my full res on my hard drive for prints and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I do that, and I've got an instant backup of JPEGs, and also each month I move my JPEGs onto another hard drive. So that's my backup system.
That's pretty good setup. Not gonna lie. Always keep your originals, everyone.
Yeah,
Whether
Yes.
your raw files, whatever your high res,
I'd
just
say
keep 'em.
except for wildlife, like a bunch of random frames.
Oh yeah, if you have 100 million junk shots of the same bird perched on a tree, by all means delete them. But yeah.
So Ryan, what's your workflow?
Let me see here. It's kind of quite a bit. I'm looking at my computer right next to me. So I have three backup systems. So I have a cloud-based one that is my website, which is by SmugMug. So I have a portfolio plan that allows, all plans on SmugMug, under SmugMug, have unlimited storage. That's for life, which is really, really nice. They're great servers. But the portfolio, has like built-in digital watermarks to future-proof my photos. And so I pretty much throw all my completed work that I edited onto there. All my raw files are on a I think it's 2 terabyte hard drive, which doesn't sound like much. I probably will need to upgrade it in the near future, but it holds quite a bit. And I'm kind of choosy, so I delete a lot of what I do, even if it's an okay-ish photo, just so I can save space, even though space is pretty ample nowadays and cheap to obtain. And then I have a 5 terabyte that includes a copy of all that raw file for spanning like the 4 years that I had now and counting. And that also includes all my video files, all the video clips, because obviously video takes up a lot more storage than photo as well. And then I use this piece of software. It's called GoodSync Synchronizer, and you can assign jobs and different tasks to copy paste or modify, overwrite different hard drives, different storage locations. And it's a very nice autonomous, automated system of, copying and backing up your hard drives. You just got to really know what you're doing, because if you don't, you can overwrite. I've actually done this before. You can overwrite files that you didn't mean to. So you just got to really know what you're doing. Be careful with that. And that's pretty much it. I really don't do too much else. I catalog, my work based on, what the subject or species is, and that's pretty much it.
That's a great system. I mean, you're never gonna lose anything.
I hope not.
You are very prepared.
Rylan?
I try to. I'm meticulous. I like to be organized.
So for me, mine's really not that complicated, if I'm being honest. So usually I always get my pictures off my XQD. I mean, it doesn't really make that big of a difference, if any, I don't think, if you get it off your XQD card or CF Express card or SD card or whatever. And then I transfer them directly onto my backup hard drive. I don't leave them on my computer, because if I saved all my photos on my computer, that would take up way too much space. So I save them onto my external hard drive, and I just leave all my raw files on there, and then I edit from that hard drive. I do always keep all my SD cards, like once they're full, and then I typically reuse most of my XQDs. And that's pretty much it. I save all my edited files on my external hard drive and my computer, and I also put them on my phone. So my edited files are really good and backed up.
So do you guys have any announcements this week?
Nope.
I do.
I mean, I tried to. It's kind of sad story. I tried to get a job at doing like portraiture, but like a day job, but like they were like, nah, we don't want you. I had like a phone interview, so it's kind of sad. I just saw I got the email right before we started recording, and they're just like, it's like that, professional business, like, oh, thank you for applying to blah, blah. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see opportunities in the future for you. We're looking at other candidates at this time. I'm like, crap. Because what they did is they looked at, this is over the phone, but still they looked at my my LinkedIn, which is what I applied with, and then they looked at my Facebook page, and they're like, yeah, but we see you doing a lot of like the wildlife and stuff, and like that's not how are you going to photograph people? And I was like, to
I have
increase
that same problem too.
Yeah. But I was like, I gave like the answer I prepared for, because I knew they're going to ask that. There's no doubt. And I was like, to expand my portfolio, which is true, but they're just kind of like, yeah. So I'm not really surprised I got this email, and so
I wish
kind
there
of
were
bummer.
more nature photography day jobs. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Oh well.
You should consider being like a I don't know, like a photographer Tour guide. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Tour guide? You mean do
I think
workshops?
you'd be good at that.
There's
Yeah,
people.
like work with a company. Maybe you might have to get a license or something.
Well, that contract, I guess we'll call it job for the associate. That's still in limbo. Because I know the director is still on medical leave. Last I heard, so I'm not going to push the issue. But I see what you're saying, though. Yeah, there's a lot of I guess you call them professionals in my area that do like they're partnered with the local park districts somewhere, and they do like workshops in the summer. And well, nowadays it's harder with pandemic stuff, but you could still get a group of few people together, do some like in-house kind of lecture-based stuff, and then go out in the field and apply that knowledge. So that's definitely an idea I want to explore in the future.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty much it for announcements. One thing we did want to talk about briefly here is a little bit of monetization for the show. And we just want to let you guys know right away, we're not trying to get money for the show for our own benefit. We just want to potentially invest in some higher quality recording software and maybe some ads so we can get it to more listeners. And of course, more listeners means higher quality content, maybe higher level guests, just a better listening experience in general. So we're considering doing a Ko-fi page, which is kind of like Patreon, but it doesn't mean exclusive content. So it's just it's like basically you buy us a coffee. That's why it's named Ko-fi coffee. So
That's
it's like
clever.
the price of a coffee to support the podcast.
Yeah, we're not trying to. What we mean is, I mean, Henry said it well, but like, yeah, we're not trying to pocket anything we'd make from that. We're gonna kind of directly put it collectively between the three of us into furthering and bettering this show and making a higher quality show for you, the listener or viewer.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what we're about. So I think that wraps it up.
Yeah. Briefly before we go off,
I just want to say thank you to Exploring Nature 49. Thank you again, MK, for giving us this wonderful topic. I think we really enjoyed our conversation, guys. And like I said in the beginning, if there's anyone else with a show idea or even wants to be a guest, and yeah, just hit us up, DM us, email us, do whatever you want, and we may have you on the show.
And one more thing, we're talking about an idea. Or at least I was thinking about an idea of like different kind of gear. If you ever want an episode focused on like beginner gear setup, I know we kind of touched on that today. But I'm sure we'd all love to do an episode kind of going into some good beginner gear you could buy to get some great shots. So, yeah.
It all sounds good. Yeah. Thanks again, Exploring Nature. As I just said, we'll put the links down to all of his stuff. He does some, like I said, wonderful YouTube videography and photography as well on his Instagram. So you can check those out down below. Follow all of our photography accounts. We all do YouTube stuff and post on Instagram, Twitter, elsewhere. And that's pretty much it. All right, that's going to wrap up another episode here of the All Outdoors Photography Podcast. We're available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and the video version on YouTube as well. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.